Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Jeanne White is the producer and writes the blog. I just want to remind everybody that September 21st is World Alzheimer's Awareness Day, and September is World Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And, just if you're a caregiver, show your journey on your page and just, post on your page and raise awareness. I have a very special guest with me today. My guest, phenomenal. You've heard it before, but I'm going to just tell you a little bit. My guest has a master's in social work. She did so much work for the Alzheimer's community that she received a Presidential Service Award for her work. My guest, Karen Francis, started many groups, even on Facebook. And I want to welcome Karen Francis to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome. Thank you, Karen. And we're going to talk about hallucinations and delusions in dementia, with dementia.
Great. One thing I want to mention real quick, though, was you were talking about this being like the World Alzheimer's Month, which is it is. But and I can't remember if I told you about this or not, or if you remember me doing this before, but in November, which is actually National Alzheimer's Month in the United States, I'm going to do what is called a virtual Lights of Love, so let me go back a little. When I was still running all those groups and working for a facility, in November, I would have a service in November called Lights of Love, where we had a candlelight service, and we remembered the people that we've lost to dementia. We honored the caregivers that took care of them. We honored the people that were living with it, and they were beautiful services. And since we are still dealing with this coronavirus, and because I've had a great response before when I've done a virtual Lights of Love, I'm going to do it again in November, where, if you have a loved one that has dementia, or if you have dementia, I will set up another page. I don't have it set up yet for this year, but I will ask for you to give like a little, appreciation or in memory of somebody, and a picture if you'd like. And I'm going to have some special guests during that month to talk about their work with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. But that will be in the month of November. So I just wanted to mention that quick.
Oh, thank you, Karen. I'm actually very much interested in that. And where can they send their picture to?
Well, I will set up the page. I'm going to set up the page.
Okay.
And it will be, National Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and it will be the Lights of Love page. And I'll send you the information once I get it set up.
Oh,
I did one.
Excellent.
I've done a few of them before on Facebook, and we had thousands of people from all over the world that participated, which was awesome. But I have a feeling I'm going to have to set up a new page, so I will give you the details about that once we get a little bit closer.
Oh, okay. You know what? I know I'm having widow's fog. I just don't remember seeing that, but my mind isn't 100% there lately. But that's really amazing, and I definitely would like to participate by sending that picture and, little short bio to them, your Lights of Love. And in November is also Caregivers Awareness.
Yes,
I think
it
a
is.
Caregiver Day.
It is. And that's why I said we honor the caregivers as well.
Yeah.
So, when I did my service before, I would have, we would do the candlelight, but we remember the people we lost, but we would also honor all the caregivers, and not just the spouse or the family caregivers, but also like the caregivers in the facilities who, these people don't make a ton of money. If they are working in a facility with dementia, they have to truly love those people. It's not something that you do because it's easy money. You do it because you love the work and you love the people and you have compassion. So we honor those caregivers as well.
That's excellent. That's true. They don't pay enough, and that's why there's a high turnover rate in those facilities. And that's why they work 2 different jobs, if not more, to make ends meet. Yes, that's a good point. And thank you for doing that, Karen. That's really awesome.
You're welcome.
I'm excited about that because,
I am too.
Yes, you're welcome. Caregivers should be noted. Do you know what day caregivers, I know in November it's caregivers a month, but I forgot the exact day. But once I know that, folks, I will put it out there because right now I can't think.
I'm not sure there's a specific day, but I know that month is dedicated to caregivers.
Right.
So,
I thought there was a
caregiver
day,
recognition.
but not sure. Right. Yeah. I thought President Reagan declared a specific day.
But it was for the month. It was for the month.
Oh, for the month. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm confused. Not surprising, folks. I never claim to be perfect. And here I'm chatting with Betsy. We just go with
perfect,
the flow.
Betsy. Nobody's perfect, but you're perfect in how much you loved your husband and took care of him, and how much you want to help other people. So,
well, thank you.
Take
thank
that
you
credit.
Very much. Thank you. I will. What you've done in the past, Karen, is amazing. And like I said before when you were on, I wish we had connected much earlier because I could have really used help with Matt. But I'm glad you're on, chatting with Betsy again. And Karen, what's the difference, if you could explain, between a hallucination and a delusion?
Okay. So, that's the first thing I'd like to tackle, because there are times where I've talked to a caregiver and they're telling me that somebody's hallucinating, but then when they tell me the story behind it, it's actually delusions that they're experiencing. So it's important to know the difference, because here's the thing. Hallucinations are atypical for most dementias other than Lewy body dementia. I mean, they can happen later in the disease process, but it's normally because of another health issue that they experience hallucinations with Alzheimer's. So the difference is a hallucination is seeing, feeling, or smelling something that is not there. So they are imagining that they are seeing somebody or something that's not there. Sometimes they might feel something, smelling something that's not there as part of hallucination is very common. All of those things can happen. All of your senses can be involved in hallucination. A delusion, though, is not. It's not seeing something that's not there or feeling something that's there. A delusion is a false thought. So a hallucination is, George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson are in your living room having dinner with you. A delusion would be something like, everybody's talking about me, nobody loves me, my daughter hasn't come to see me for weeks. It's false thoughts. It's not something that they're seeing or feeling or smelling. So that's the big difference. But to separate them further, delusions, it is common with all dementia to be delusional. And when I say delusional, that includes there's a bit of paranoia, which could be bringing on delusions. Delusions are common with Alzheimer's disease, with vascular dementia, with Lewy body dementia, with frontotemporal degeneration, all of those dementias. And there's other forms. But the thing is, they're pretty common because their brain's not functioning like it should be. Hallucinations, however, are atypical with most dementias except for Lewy body dementia. And with Lewy body dementia, it's actually a core symptom. If you don't have those hallucinations you don't have those hallucinations, it's probably not Lewy body dementia. The other thing to mention too, like with hallucinations, if all of a sudden, your loved one is hallucinating that there is a circus in your living room and, there are bears on top of balls, like juggling other balls or whatever. And it's all of a sudden, this didn't happen the day before, but it's now and it's vivid and they're explaining to you what's going on in the room. That's a situation with Alzheimer's disease, with vascular dementia, with any type of dementia, even with Lewy bodies. Like if their hallucinations have stepped up or just appeared out of the blue, that's a situation where you need to call the doctor immediately. And hopefully at this point of the stage when people are experiencing these things, it's usually like further on in the disease process. Even with Lewy body, it will happen. It will happen early, but with the other dementias, it'll usually happen later in the disease process. So hopefully you have a doctor that's been managing this disease, for a while. But you need to call that doctor immediately because the main cause of hallucinations with other dementias other than Lewy body dementia is typically another health issue. And the most common being infection. I know that you're part of like a lot of different Alzheimer's groups where people will talk about, my mom or dad or my husband or my wife, they're hallucinating and they've never done this before and I don't know what to do about it. If it's sudden like that, it's probably because of something like a urinary tract infection, a UTI. So you'll see like 1,000 comments, have them tested for a UTI. And that is the most common reason or the most common infection that people have with this whole disease. With any of those types of dementias I mentioned, they may experience hallucinations if they have some other health issue going on. And there's other health issues besides infection, like dehydration. If they've been sick for a while and they haven't been taking in enough fluids and they're not in the hospital getting a constant IV, it could be dehydration. It could be new medications or an increase in medications or withdrawing from a medication that could cause a hallucination. So there's many, many causes for hallucinations, and delusions are just part and parcel of dementia in general with all different types. But the difference is the delusions are just them not thinking something is, the reality is different than what their reality is. Hallucinations are actually seeing, feeling, smelling something that is not there. And if that happens, and it's not Lewy body dementia, you already have that diagnosis, you need to contact the doctor immediately. Or even, if it's happening suddenly, especially if they're frightening hallucinations, you need to get them to the emergency room or to an urgent care to have them treated, and have them figure out what's going on here. Why are they all of a sudden hallucinating? I'm not saying that hallucinations don't happen with Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia or FTD. What I'm saying is they are not typical. and they shouldn't be typical until maybe the very end. And then even then, I'm not sure that it's so much a hallucination. The other thing I would mention is when you're wondering, is my mom or dad hallucinating, take into consideration the environment that they're in. When they're telling you a story about something they see, feel, smell, whatever, that you don't see, hear, or smell, take into consideration their environment and their vision. If they have poor eyesight, which happens with almost all dementias, and I don't want to say vision in farsightedness or nearsightedness, but what happens a lot with Alzheimer's disease and even, any other type of dementia, there is problems with things like depth perception, which can skew what they're seeing. If you're looking out at a window into a yard, one of the things that I've heard a lot is that, somebody's looking outside. And I think I used this example in our last talk. But somebody's looking outside and they said, there's bears in the yard. And you look outside and you don't see anything but the, backyard. But then when you look at what they're looking at and they're telling you, there's a bear, there's a bear, there's a bear, think about things like, okay, well, I have shrubbery back here. Could they be mistaking that for a bear because they can't see very well? So take that into consideration before you immediately worry. Like, really look at the environment and consider what environment they're sitting in at the moment when you think that they're hallucinating. A lot of it can be visual problems, and I'll tell you of a couple of I'll give you a couple examples of things that have happened with people that the family or the spouse thought was a hallucination, but it actually was a misperception of what they were seeing. For example, for hundreds of years even, they've said that you should not have mirrors in a house with somebody who has some sort of dementia. And whatever they called it, 100 years ago, before Dr. Alois Alzheimer's actually defined the disease, was take mirrors out of the home. And here's the reason, and what's happened, and it's happened with people in my actual support groups or people that I admitted to my facility. So when you have mirrors in your home and you have a person with dementia, they lose periods of time, and they may not remember the last 10 years, last 20 years, last 30 years of their life. But with almost all dementias, they remember back to when they remember those early memories of when they were young, when they were kids, when they were teenagers, maybe earlier in their marriage, when they were first married. So the thing with mirrors is I've had more than one person or more than one family where the person with the diagnosis is walking by a mirror and they think somebody else in the house because they don't recognize their reflection. They're thinking of themselves as a 20 or 30-year-old when they're actually 70 or 80. So I've had serious situations where that's happened, and that person with the dementia diagnosis who walked by that mirror and saw themselves and thought, there's somebody in the house. So they call 911 because they believe somebody's broken into their home. That's not really a hallucination. It's a misperception of what they're seeing, which you can consider more of a delusion, but I can't tell you how many times that's happened. It happens a lot. That or they'll see.
I've heard of that. That's like, they don't recognize themselves in the mirror.
No, they don't. That's a a huge or common issue is when they're looking at themselves in the mirror. I have another, well, it's kind of it's a really sad MA story associated with dementia, sad, but I had one where this is another couple in my group where the husband, he's probably one of the most faithful people that ever walked this planet. His wife is actually fairly young when she developed symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. But she would go in while she was still able to take a shower on her own, and she still wanted to take a shower. She would take her clothes off, and she'd go into the shower, and she'd come out of the shower, and she would see underwear on the floor, and she would start screaming at her husband, "Who did you have in our house?" Thinking that he had some other woman, and they left their underwear in their bedroom or their bathroom. That's not a hallucination, that's a delusion. But
right.
it happens because they don't remember, why are these clothes? They don't maybe not remember taking their clothes off 10 minutes earlier, and they see them on the floor, and they're already paranoid because they don't know what's happening to themselves. So when they see things like that are not things that are out of place, out of their routine, they're going to get upset about it. They might. It doesn't happen in all cases, but it's something that can happen. But that would be a delusion, obviously. It's not that they snuck somebody else in the house while she was taking a shower.
Right.
So,
I think, too, Karen, that if at all possible, that people know their loved one's history, because they may not be having a hallucination, but they could be reliving an event that their loved one knows nothing about, a horrific event, being in a war, being a survivor of rape or,
right.
a kidnapping, whatever, a robbery, whatever that
I was going to bring that up because
was.
that happens more times than we know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And going along that line too, especially when you have a person who goes into a facility, so they might have multiple people actually giving them care. Those people might remind them of somebody from their past. It might be a good memory, but it might be a bad memory. And it's happened where, they had a bad memory. That person, who's actually their caregiver for the second shift, looks like somebody who actually abused them physically when they were a child. And, to simplify what happens with Alzheimer's disease is that you lose the most recent memories, and you keep losing those memories until you get back to when they were children or in their early years. And those memories seem maybe more vivid than they should be because they don't have anything else recently. But they're scared because that person, even though it's not the same person, it looks like or reminds them of that person. And, you need to be mindful of that when you're thinking about hallucinations and delusions as well. Like, if they're beginning to have a problem, is it because there's somebody new in their life? So it's just something to consider, like the way people look or something that they say, or even, when you think about the senses and how they can invoke memories. For example, I'll give you one. So when I smell coffee in the morning and or cigarette smoke, it immediately makes me think of my dad getting ready for work in the morning.
Yes. That is the same here. Yes, my father smoked too and drank coffee. Yeah.
And if you have windows open or you were drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette in front of them, it might bring back memories. Like you said, they might be reliving a memory when those senses are all involved in what they're thinking.
The mind. It's so interesting. It baffles me, Karen, and the doctors. I mean, the doctors are baffled. And when you're, I could give an example, like Matt all of a sudden had such a change of behavior last May 2019. I did take him to the emergency room to rule out any infection. He didn't have any. It was just his disease progressing. And he would see men. He thought men were hitting him in the head. That was a hallucination. He thought one time I got him changed. He goes, "You're going to get me changed in front of all these people?" He thought the people in the TV were in the living room. So I would say that was more like, delusional.
Exactly.
Yeah, the paranoia. I mean, my mother-in-law, Matt's mom, thought I was stealing from her and thought that I told Josh to get her annuities. So, it's really so bizarre. And I really suggest that the listeners find out, read about hallucinations and delusions so that you are somewhat prepared, because nothing can really prepare you to see it face to face. Take my word for it. But at least you'll know what to do. I didn't know what to do with my mother-in-law. I knew what to do with Matt. And there's a big difference.
One of the things I do tell caregivers a lot, or I've told caregivers a lot, is that don't let the TV be a babysitter for your loved one, because that can feed their delusions and their hallucinations. Especially, okay, I understand some people, their favorite shows, which is great, that they might watch, or maybe you put DVDs or tapes in for them, but the problem is sometimes they cannot tell the difference between what's happening on the TV and what's really happening in their life. They can get mesmerized by that TV and feel like this is happening to them. So if they're watching, like, Discovery ID, that's probably not a great idea. Because you're probably going to upset them.
Yes. Yeah, that's true, because I could not watch IDTV. There were certain voices that annoyed Matt I couldn't have. I would have to put my earplugs in. And, you don't want to upset your loved one. So, put your earplugs in so they don't hear the voices that come over the radio that annoy them, or if you're listening to something on your phone. We don't know what will irk them until it happens, really. But, I could definitely see that Matt didn't know the difference of, if they talked about a tornado or hurricane somewhere else, he thought maybe it was happening here.
Right.
And he would become anxious, yes. Oh, I could definitely see that.
Right.
Yeah, that's
really
a good point.
Try to control what they are watching and listening to, because if they were already had delusions or hallucinations, you don't want to feed those. And the last thing I would want to talk about too is, I think hallucinations really in particular scare a lot of caregivers. And they can be really scary. But at the same time, sometimes when they're hallucinating, it's not a bad hallucination. They might be hallucinating that they're in the North Pole and Santa Claus is in the house next door, and, they're getting toys ready for Santa to take to the kids. That's a true story. I mean, I had somebody who thought that. And so if they're having hallucination and it's not troublesome, it's not getting them into any kind of danger, they're not scared by that hallucination, my thinking has always been, then why treat it? Let's just keep them happy, safe, and calm. Maybe if it's something that's really getting them worked up, maybe treat them for that anxiety they're feeling. But you don't need to treat that hallucination, because what doctors will treat hallucinations with are antipsychotics. And antipsychotics can be dangerous to a person with dementia. Not in all cases, and there's some that are not as dangerous as other antipsychotics as far as side effects. But if they're not unpleasant hallucinations, just roll with that hallucination. Don't argue with them. Go with it. If they think Cirque du Soleil is going on in your living room, be there in awe with them, like the girl on the freaking high wire walking across, and then, on her swing or whatever. Go with whatever they're telling you and just keep them calm. And, I think with dementia, you always hear so much about redirection. If you're afraid, like, oh, well, this is going to keep them up, or I got to figure out why they're seeing these things, try to redirect them. Take them into another room. I talked about environment. Environment is a huge thing. No matter what their hallucination is, or even their delusion, take them to another room. Give them another view of the world. Engage another sense. Take them into the kitchen and have them help you bake chocolate chip cookies, which may not take long. Just get some chocolate chip cookie dough and have them help you put it on a cookie sheet. By engaging other senses, you can get their mind off of those hallucinations if you think that they're bothersome. So I'm not saying you definitely always need to tell the doctor about these hallucinations, but if they're not hurtful or they're scared by these hallucinations, then there's really not a huge need to treat them for the hallucinations other than to treat the symptoms that are, a side effect of that hallucination. So if they're anxious, ask the doctor to give them something for anxiety. But think about things like their environment, the room they're in, what they're doing at the time. Engage other senses, and sometimes you can snap them out of that thought or whatever it is they're seeing or smelling or feeling. So it's something to consider before you go the route of taking actually a medication for a hallucination.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, because in my experience with Matt and his mom, the antipsychotics have really tremendous side effects that I didn't particularly care for. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you are between a rock and a hard place as a caregiver, where they're, hallucinating and getting very agitated because their hallucinations are making them agitated, and then you have to take something. A lot of these medications, Karen, are black box for people over 65.
Right. And that's why I'm saying they're so dangerous for the elderly in general.
Yeah, I always recommend here on Chatting with Betsy, talk to your physician. If your loved one has to be on a antipsychotic for hallucinations, something for anxiety, watch for side effects and report it.
Right.
And don't be afraid to say, what, I something's going on here. It's one of the side effects I think are happening, and talk to your doctor about it. Always talk to your doctor about any change of behavior, condition, and anything else going on. Karen, I can't believe our time is up. It goes by so fast. And I want to thank you. And I want you to come on again if you'd like. You're always welcome. You're always welcome, Chatting with Betsy. Is there anything else you would like to say? And where can people get in touch with you? When Karen has, the Caregivers Comfy Chair.
Yeah, the Caregivers Comfy Chair is my group that I manage on my own. It's nice. It's a nice, small, manageable group. So you can contact me through Caregivers Comfy Chair, or you can contact me through Facebook under Karen Francis. I also help with Maria's Place. They have a page on Facebook. You can ask private questions through there if you send a message. But we have a lot of information on there, and there are certain links on there that will take you to the Maria's Place website, where there are still some videos on there that I've done talking about different healthcare issues. and issues with dementia in particular, or just information and, education. So get hold me those ways.
Well, thank you, Karen. And folks, if you missed any of this podcast and you don't want to miss any Chatting with Betsy podcast, please subscribe. It's for free on Apple, Google, iHeart, Podchaser, Spreaker, Spotify, Google, wherever there is a podcast media, you'll see Chatting with Betsy. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell for Passion World Talk Radio and Jeanne White, Station Manager, and for all that they do. In a world where you could be anything, folks, please be kind. We need it, and shine your light bright. You can contact me. I have my own Facebook page, Betsy Wurzel, Wurzel, and I also have a group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, that you're welcome to join. You do not have to have Alzheimer's. You could have any dementia, or your loved one could have any dementia, or just come and support other caregivers. Until we chat again, be safe and wear your mask. Bye-bye now.